Joining us now, former CIA Director John Brennan. He is an NBC News national security analyst. His memoir, titled Undaunted: My Fight Against America's Enemies at Home and Abroad, is out today in paperback. Director Brennan, it's great to have you on the show this morning. I want to talk about the book in a moment, but first, if you put yourself in the shoes of the CIA director right now, and you're watching what's happening in Russia. You're looking at the dissent in the streets, the resistance to this call-up of 300,000 new troops, the failures on the battlefield. How are you assessing where Vladimir Putin is right now and where this war may go?
Well, I think our assessment is that Putin realizes he's in trouble on the battlefield in Ukraine, where the Russian military has been suffering setback after setback. In the international arena, where the countries like China and India and others are, in fact, criticizing what's going on in Ukraine and the protracted nature of this horrific war. But then I think most profoundly for Putin is on the domestic front. Not only is he having to deal with economic challenges, but also now this tremendous opposition to this partial mobilization, the call-up of supposed reservists. So I do think that he sees that his plans for Ukraine and swallowing it up over 7 months ago have fallen apart. And so now I think he has to determine how best to try to salvage something from what has turned out to be a real debacle for him.
He reminded last week, Director Brennan, the world that he has nuclear weapons. He said, I'm not bluffing when I say I'm willing to use them. How seriously should the United States take that threat?
Well, I don't think we should ever discard out of hand anything that Putin says. I do not think at this point that he is seriously considering the use of tactical nuclear weapons or any type of nuclear bomb in Ukraine because he knows that there would be international condemnation. And also, I think it would invite the U.S. and NATO allies to intervene in some manner. As President Biden and Jake Sullivan have said, it would be catastrophic if in the event that Putin decides to go down that nuclear route. So I think it's pretty typical of him to try to intimidate others. But at this point, I do think he is not deciding to go down that road.
Director Brennan, good morning. Jonathan Lemire. Let's shift to a matter here at home. We've all been following the developments in the situation surrounding the classified documents that former President Trump had at his estate in Palm Beach. You, of course, know better than anybody about the importance of these documents and keeping them safe. Walk us through a little bit as to your sense of this, the procedures that were clearly not followed, and what you feel would be an appropriate recourse for anyone, whether a CIA officer or a former president who was found to have classified documents he shouldn't.
Well, I served 6 presidents, and all of them treated not just the intelligence professionals with great respect and dignity, but also the documents that they would read and look at and see in the Oval Office or in the White House Situation Room. Never did I think that a president would, in fact, take those documents out of the White House and leave them in an unsecured area. And so I know that if this was the case with any CIA officer or NSA or State Department officer, there would have been very swift action taken to make sure that, first of all, these documents were going to be retrieved, but secondly, that the individual would be held accountable for what was clearly an intentional breach of security practices and procedures. And clearly, Donald Trump knew that he was doing something that was highly illegal by taking all of these documents and looking at the cover pages and the markings, not just the classification level, but also some of the code words. These documents contain some of the most highly sensitive and highly restrictive intelligence that really keeps this country's national security safe. And so therefore, it really was outrageous. And I know my former colleagues are outraged at what has happened.
Director Brennan, your book includes a new epilogue that touches on recent events. So I'm wondering if you can share with our viewers not just what those events are, but why it was important to note them and what you think the biggest threat to democracy is today.
Well, for over 30 years, Mika, I was trying to counter Soviet and then Russian efforts to try to undermine our democratic system of government here. Also trying to stop the Chinese and other foreign adversaries from using disinformation and propaganda to sow the seeds of dissension within our midst here in the United States. Unfortunately, what I've seen over the past number of years is more and more American politicians resort not only to demagoguery, but to spreading falsehoods and disseminating lies that really distort the views of the American people and the American electorate. And so therefore, I really am concerned that this continued use of disinformation is really undermining our democracy in a way that is, I think, so fundamental to maintaining our system of government and our values. And when I see individuals like Donald Trump and also what has happened to the Republican Party, I find surreal. And that's what I say in the epilogue in the book, that it used to be a bastion of conservative thinking and national security defense thinking. Now it has just resorted to these lies and falsehoods as a way to try to retain any type of political influence that it might have. But it's not just the politicians, it's the social media influencers. It's those talk show hosts on other networks that really, again, distort and pervert the views of the American public. So this is where I think American officials have a particular responsibility to speak truthfully to the American public.
Former CIA Director John Brennan, thank you very much. The paperback edition of his memoir, Undaunted, My Fight Against America's Enemies at Home and Abroad, is available now. We appreciate your coming on the show this morning.